President and Vice President Harris are watching the ongoing situation out of Russia very closely today. As the White House is saying, they held a briefing this morning with the top members of the national security team. And the president also speaking with our allies today by phone as well. I want to get right to NBC's Monica Alba, who's standing by for us at the White House. Monica, bring us up to date. What are we learning? What is the Biden administration watching right now?
They're certainly watching this very closely, Yasmin, and all of the different pieces of the administration and the government have really come together here to coordinate, to assess these fast-moving developments. And even though we're not hearing from President Biden on camera, I think his actions and what he was doing this morning at the White House really do send a clear message of where the White House is on all of this. And that is that even starting last night when much of this was beginning to unfold, that the White House was going to be consulting allies and partners to discuss the situation in Russia while they continued to gather some intelligence about everything that was going on overnight and into today, of course. So the president, the vice president, both actually traveling today. They had journalists with them who tried to shout questions to see if either one of them wanted to speak to this. Neither did. But we do know that they were both briefed earlier at the White House, and everybody from the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the CIA director, the National Security Advisor, all of them were involved in this conversation. And then we also know that the president did have a call this morning with the leaders of Germany, France, and the UK, where they talked about the ongoing situation in Russia and where all leaders reaffirmed their support for Ukraine. Now, we've also learned separately from that, Yasmin, that the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, was supposed to travel to Copenhagen yesterday to take place in some international talks about the war in Ukraine there in Denmark, and he canceled the trip in light of the situation unfolding in Russia. So he stayed to continue to brief the president. He was with him this morning. He traveled with the president to Camp David, which is where they both will be for the remainder of today. We don't expect the president to have any kind of on-camera comments or public events while he's at Camp David, and he will return to the White House tomorrow. So you're clearly seeing here a White House that is talking to key players and stakeholders, but waiting to really comment further until a lot more information can be learned about how all of this happened and about what could happen next. Yasmin.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we don't know what may be to come. It seems right now, while this news is coming out, that in fact the Wagner mercenary group has turned around. This doesn't necessarily mean it is the end. It's not just geopolitical implications here, Monica. We also have a huge U.S. embassy inside Moscow, which I've been to. I lived in Moscow for quite some time, reported from there as well. It is a fortified area, but we have major U.S. personnel on the ground. If, in fact, this thing were to re-escalate, are there plans in place for what to do then when it comes to U.S. personnel?
And I can tell you, Yasmin, that I think the public posture here of not saying much shouldn't mean that there isn't a ton happening behind the scenes to assess and address exactly the question that you pose there. And so even though you're seeing not much come out in terms of statements or trying to provide any geopolitical analysis here, behind the scenes, all of these major players are having conversations also with their counterparts in key countries and in key places regionally to speak to those kinds of questions. Should there be a lot more unrest, or to your point, if this really goes into a different direction, depending on what agreements may have taken place now?